Greetings and salutations, students. This is instructor Alan G, and I am presenting to you a overview of the textbook that we're going to be using this semester. And also this video will be an overview of the project that is being assigned this week. So I'll try to make this brief, but informative and helpful. I think if you watch this video from beginning to end, I think you're going to be much more successful for this particular project, the first project we're doing from the book, and as a result, successful for every project we do for the rest of the course, and they're all from this book. If you understand the book reasonably well, you'll do great on these projects, you'll do great in the course, okay? I'm redoing this video, recreating it, re-recording it. The last one was a few years old, and I've taught the course many times since. And so now I am very much more familiar with the book than I was when I first recorded the initial video. And I'm also very much more familiar with the kinds of challenges that students have when they try to do this first project from the book. So I think this will be helpful for those reasons as well. Now I'm recording this in spring of 2025. However, I intend to use this in summer, fall, and next year. It should be valid for many semesters to come. When you first enrolled in the course and about a week before the course began, you should have received from me a welcome email where I give you an overview of what to expect in terms of engaging in the course through Canvas and what you need to understand. One of the things in that welcome email I provide is a link to this textbook that we're using. And so some students download it before the course starts. Other students may not do that, but once the course starts, then it's easy to download it directly from Canvas. I don't email the book because it's over 25 megabytes. Most email programs will not accept that size of an attachment. So the page that I'm looking at right now shows the page where you found this video that you're watching. And, you know, I may rewrite this page a little bit, but basically it will be mostly the same. And so you can download the book from this page in week 3, this overview video page. There's a link to download. And of course, when you're downloading in Canvas here, you always just want to hit the download symbol, the download button. Don't bother clicking the link. That's not necessary. It's kind of a waste of time. It's better just to hit the download symbol. You'll directly download the file. Now let's back up a little bit and look at the modules where we've come from and where we're going. The very first module was an introduction to the course and to Excel, and I entitled that Excel Basics. Week 2, we started to get into some meaningful Excel skills and tools and concepts. And I would say that if you didn't fully understand what we covered in week 2, in fact, it would be difficult for you to fully understand it if you're brand new to Excel. Just know that there's a lot there, even though for some of you that may have a little more experience, that project may have been pretty easy, but there's actually a lot there. This week 3, this is our first time that we're doing a project from the book. And so this will take you a little bit longer because there's pages you'll have to flip through in the book and follow instructions. Okay, so you'll want to set aside a little more time than you did for week 2, and certainly more time than week 1. Week 1 was deliberately very brief. So in week 3, we have our customary introduction and objectives page. Then there's the discussion assignment. By the way, don't pay any attention to dates that you see. Those won't apply. What I'm covering here is the other information, everything other than dates. So don't look at the dates and think, oh, it's coming due, or it's past due, you know. So that discussion is a graded activity. You can tell that by the fact that it's indented. I gave you a page in there and explaining that I realize that some students don't have any experience with Excel at all. And for some students to follow these highly detailed instructions and complete these projects, you know, perfectly is going to be beyond the scope of what some very, very beginning students can accomplish or want to accomplish, because not everyone has the same amount of time to devote to this class. So I realize that. And you need to know where you are, you know, how much time you have to devote to the class and where you stand in terms of your computer skills. Okay. Someone who has good computer skills, who has actually already is already possessing some basic Excel skills or even intermediate Excel skills, that student will benefit from this course greatly, and they'll be able to do everything to a very high level. But someone that's brand new, you know, you might have difficulty at week 2 and week 3. That's okay. You need to start somewhere. And I will keep you enrolled in this class as long as you're submitting work honestly and on a weekly basis. So if that means that you have to redo the week 2 activity or the week 3 activity, or you want to redo it and maybe skip some of the others further in the, later in the class, that's okay, as long as you're submitting work weekly. Now, does that mean that you're going to complete or pass the class if you don't do all of the work? No, of course not. But what's most important is that you're learning and growing. Most people that take Excel take it more than once. They've taken it before. They've taken it with different teachers. Maybe they've had an Excel class like years ago, and now they're taking a refresher. Very, very common. The reason for this is that Excel is very important, but it's also very comprehensive. Not, I don't want to say complicated, but it can do a lot. There's a lot there. So stick with us. Okay, now the page for our ebook and overview and the chapter 1 overview, I'm about to get into that in a little more detail here. So that particular page precedes the assignment for chapter 1. You, like I said, you can download the book. This is not meant to be a step-by-step instruction for the project. Okay, here's the project page. And again, ignore the dates. On the project page, I provide you with the section of the book that you're going to need. Okay, now I will always do that every week. Every week that we do an assignment from the book, which is week 3 through week 11, I will provide you exactly the section that you need for that week, right on the assignment page. So that's what you see here. In fact, it's the title is Excel ebook chapter 1. Okay. And so even though it looks like it's the beginning of the book, well, it is the beginning of the book. It only goes through chapter 1. Okay. It contains all the beginning information. So first I want to go do an overview of the book. And so, and then we'll get an in-depth look at the chapter 1 exercise. Okay, so I've located my copy of Excel. It's about 27 megabytes. I located that copy and I double-clicked it from within the folder where I have it stored on my computer, and it opened up, and it's a PDF, so it opens up inside of a web browser, typically. And the browser that I have associated with PDFs is Chrome. You might have Edge or Firefox or Safari designated to open up your PDFs. Some of you may even have Adobe Acrobat designated to open up your PDFs. I don't recommend that. I think you should use a web browser to open up your PDFs particularly if you're only going to be looking at the PDF. Web browsers are made for viewing, whereas Adobe Acrobat is made for editing. But I guess if you're using the Acrobat Reader, then that's made for viewing. Anyway, so this is the first page of the PDF. You can see that I'm using Chrome if you look at the title bar area, plus and minus for zooming, and you see the page numbers, 1 of 387. My browser tabs are way up at the top. You probably can't see them. You don't need to. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the next page. You'll see that this book was created and compiled and authored by many authors. There's about, I guess, about 8 or 10 names here. And it was in part, at least, funded by Open Oregon Educational Resources. There's a movement in education in recent years where textbooks have gotten very expensive, and and now colleges are moving away in many situations from using expensive textbooks and opting to use zero cost textbooks or open educational resources, free resources. And some funding has been set aside so that instructors can create and author textbooks, and then other instructors can take those projects and use them for their own purposes and even change them. Okay, so it's pretty interesting. From a business perspective, it seems to me that college education has gotten expensive as well as textbooks, but it seems like the colleges are cutting the publishers loose. They had an unholy alliance for many years, and now they're saying, okay, we're looking out for ourselves. We want to make free textbooks. You guys are out of the picture. Anyway, it has just meant that publishers have to create other options. And so publishers have created all kinds of reduced cost options and just bundle options for students. So this is under a Creative Commons license, where all I have to do if I wanted to publish this and offer it to others, make changes, and then republish it, I just have to make sure that I give attribution to the original authors. And by the way, some of these exercises may have been created decades ago and have been updated through the years. This particular version is called the 2019 version, but nearly everything applies directly to our current version of Excel. There's a few changes that I'll point out, and you'll notice the ribbon may look slightly different, but virtually everything that you're going to be asked to do is valid. It still works. So the table of contents page, you'll see there are 6 chapters. Chapter 1 is called Fundamental Skills. Chapter 2, Mathematical Computations. Chapter 3, Formulas, Functions, Logical and Lookup Functions. Chapter 4, Presenting Data with Charts. Chapter 5, Tables. Chapter 6, Multiple Sheet Files. So I'm just going to say a few words about these chapters and about the structure of the book. We'll use chapter 1 as our gauge for understanding how the book is set up. So you'll notice that there are about 6 sections in chapter 1 here. I'm going to put a red box around some of these sections. I'm going to change the color of the box for the next section. And I'll put a third color in for the last section. So I have 3 different boxes, 3 different colors, because this is the way you need to understand each chapter. The bulk of the chapter is devoted to a step-by-step exercise, and it takes you through the very beginning to the end, which is usually called printing. Now, even though we're not going to be printing physical copies, the printing section addresses the kinds of things you usually do before you prepare your project for printing. And by printing, I think a good way to think about that is many times people don't actually print the physical copy, but they print or create a PDF version of it. Anyway, the kinds of things we'll be doing in the printing section, which you need to accomplish, are like changing margins, setting the sheet on a single page, whether it's oriented to portrait style or landscape, page numbers, perhaps, these kinds of things, header, footer. So the bulk of the chapter is this step-by-step section, and that's where all the education is. That's where all the teaching and training is, and the explanations for how to do all of the different skills, the explanations for the concepts you need to learn. So that's what we're doing this week, that red box. Now, what is in the next two boxes, the blue and the green box that I put there? Those are separate exercises. Those are different separate exercises that, time provided, teachers assign. And so chapter practice is basically all of the same kinds of things you did during the step-by-step portion of the chapter. But now the instructions are not as detailed, and there's not as many illustrations or diagrams. And so it's a very brief section. And then scored assessment is even more condensed. Scored assessment is where they just tell you what they want you to do, and you have to remember how to do it. Of course, you're not going to remember how to do it necessarily, so you'll have to flip back to the step-by-step section, the red box, and see how it was that they wanted you to do these kinds of things in that section. The idea is you move from being having your hand held during the step-by-step section, being told every little thing you need to do, and then the chapter practice, a little less help, and then scored assessment, you're kind of on your own to some extent. So that's how many I think basically every computer textbook I've ever used, many different publishers, they're all set up that way. What they call the sections are usually different, but the first section is usually your hand being held and you being told every little thing you need to do and you being taught. And then there's progressively less help given to you. And this is how we learn everything in life. And it relates to Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. So those of you that are interested in cognitive psychology or educational psychology, Vygotsky taught the zone of proximal development. And what you know, you can do, that's great. But what you want to achieve and what you want to learn is just outside that zone. You don't want to try to reach too far outside that zone. You just want to go a little bit outside that zone and then reach another level and then go a little bit outside that zone. And this is how we incorporate new skills. This is how we learn. I think it's a great example for how we learn. So fundamental skills is the focus of this first section. And you can see that, well, we'll talk more about it in a minute. So let's go ahead and look at chapter 2, mathematical computations. Now that's kind of a funny name for this. Some of you are going to say, well, why don't they just call it formulas? Well, they wanted to use a more generic word. They could have called it mathematical calculations. That's probably what I would have called it, but they used the word computations. But just think of it as a way of not using the word formula. Why? Well, because they are going to teach you formulas in this chapter, and they're going to begin to teach you about functions. And those are two kinds of calculations. What they mean by formula here is a manual calculation, and what they mean by function is a preset calculation. So there are two kinds of formulas we'll be using, the manual and the preset automatic kinds of calculations. A function is preset, pre-created, automatic. You don't have to know anything about math to use it, or very little. Whereas a manual formula kind of a calculation plus, minus, multiply, and divide. Okay, so you'll learn more about that later. So that's the second section where they introduce calculations. And you'll notice there's a chapter practice at the very end, and then the last one, for some reason, instead of it being called an assessment, they call it chapter scored. I don't know why they changed the name, but it's the same methodology. You're going from a step-by-step large section of the chapter to a smaller section where less detail is given, to a final section where you're only asked to do things and you're not provided very much in terms of details. Okay, now I'm working with the whole book, and it's very unwieldy. And I don't recommend that you work with the whole book, as I said, when you're going through the projects. And for one of the reasons there, I just clicked on the page and it shot 40 pages up or 60 pages down. And so it's a little unwieldy. I recommend you use your page up and your page down key on the keyboard, or your arrow up, your arrow down key on the keyboard to navigate a PDF document, or to navigate this one. Particularly when there's 400 pages, clicking somewhere, you're going to end up in a very different place. Okay, so chapter 3, you'll say, wait a minute now. Chapter 3 is formulas, functions, and then it says logical and lookup functions. So what's different about this? Well, it gets into more detail. As you might imagine, the whole point of Excel, or one of the main points of Excel, is not just to arrange your data in columns and rows. That's great, that's important, but it's also to do calculations. So there's that chapter 2, where you are introduced to formulas, and then chapter 3, where you get more in depth. So you see that it's called more on the very first section, more on formulas and functions. Then they start showing you different categories, logical and lookup functions. Conditional formatting actually isn't directly related to formulas at all, but it's an excellent tool, which they include at this point. And then at the very end of the chapter, after the preparing to print, they have their chapter practice and the final one, which they now call chapter scored. Again, those last two have I'm using my down arrow now on the keyboard so it doesn't go too fast. Those last two projects, again, are the very brief instructions, general instructions, where you have to remember what to do. Chapter 4, presenting data with charts. One of the main strengths beyond Excel being a data sheet for organizing in columns and rows and calculating with formulas is the next main benefit, I guess, would be that you can create pictures of your information, pictures of your data. You can turn numbers into graphics. That's what you need to think about when you're using charts. You're taking data, sequences of data, batches of data, and you're turning it into a picture, and it conveys meaning to you in a different way, much different than the numbers do, but a valid way. And so charts are a whole new world, a whole different world, different way of analyzing your data. Formulas allow you to analyze your data in an important way, and charts allow you to do it in a visual way, a little bit different way. Tables is the next section, and most people have never used tables, or if they have, they use them without knowing what they were doing. That's what I find. People stumble across this tables tool. What are tables? Tables are a special feature in Excel that are different, quite different than a normal range of spreadsheet data. What we've been doing in Excel, or what we'll be doing in Excel up until chapter 5, is all working with spreadsheets, working with what's called a normal range of spreadsheet data. In chapter 5, they teach you about this tool called a table, which acts like a database, a small database. And it's very, very powerful. but you do need to understand how to use it. Anything that's powerful, you need to know how to use it so that you can benefit from it. So chapter 5 teaches you about tables. The final chapter is called multiple sheet files. And this is exactly what you think. Obviously, a spreadsheet can be a single sheet within a workbook, within an Excel workbook made up of many sheets. It can be a single sheet. But a lot of times an Excel project may contain many sheets. Like one of the personal Excel projects that I did for many years was an income and expense statement for myself. And so I would have January, and that would be a sheet, and then February, March, all the way through December, and then I would start the next year. And I didn't start a new file. I just kept adding new sheets to that same workbook. Now, how many sheets can you have in a single workbook? I'm not sure what the limit is. I don't think it's 64 or 128, or even 256. It might be much higher than that. It's not a bad idea if you do something like that to have a different Excel file for every 12 months. That's not a bad idea, just in case the file becomes corrupted somehow, although that's never happened to me. But anyway, it's not uncommon to have many sheets that all relate to the same data, charts that relate to data, and then maybe a page with summary calculations. Here they call them 3D references, formulas with 3D references. So this is very common, very powerful, and it's a little bit more advanced as are tables. Okay, so we're going to get into chapter 1. I want to show you chapter 1 and what to look out for when you do the chapter 1 exercise, and the things, I want to point out the things that students oftentimes have difficulty with in chapter 1. I'm not going to use this book, though, this 387-page book. I'm going to go to the assignment page. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the assignment page. Okay, so here's the assignment page in Canvas for week 3. And this first chapter from the book, chapter 1, Merchandise Cities Sales Data is the name of it, is on the screen at this time. I'm going to scroll down. Don't pay attention to any dates that you see. They are not going to be correct. The actual steps to create the project begin with saving a blank document on page 17. Okay, now I want you to look at those pages prior to blue page 17. And then the specific steps to add content. You won't be adding any content to 20 until you get to page 22. So this helps, I put that information in there to help students because sometimes they're not exactly sure when they're supposed to be adding, when they're supposed to be doing work. So actually, the textbook authors do want you to click around and look at things prior to 17 and then prior to 22. But you're not really adding any information prior to 22. But that doesn't mean you should skip those pages. I'm going to go ahead and flip through them with you, but I'm not going to do it in this assignment window, and I don't recommend that you do either. When the teacher embeds a PDF within the assignment page, don't try to use it within the assignment page, unless it's just a single sheet with a little bit of information. This is a long document with 86 pages. So what you want to do is you want to download this into a separate tab in your browser. So I'm going to hit the download button. And I see I'm using Microsoft Edge. And if you're using Google Chrome, you'll see the same kind of dynamic drop-down list of downloads appears. I see the Excel book chapter 1 appear there. I'm going to click the link where it says open file. Now, if you don't get that little drop-down that appears up there, after you download it, you just need to know where it is. It goes to your downloads folder. So go to your downloads folder and double-click the file. So I'm now in, so it opened up. I clicked it, it opened up. It opened up in a new tab, so it's in Microsoft Edge. Notice that it's 86 pages, so it's the same document. It's just going to be much easier to work with. Plus, I can easily flip between Excel, the PDF instructions, and the assignment page. Those are going to be the three windows that I need to flip between, okay? And hopefully you're good at switching windows using your Alt-Tab combination if you're on a Windows computer. So let's go ahead and look at the beginning of chapter 1. We already looked at a few pages here. There's an introduction page there. I'm not going to read that. You can read it if you would like. Let me see if I can make this as big as possible so that it's easy for you to see in the video. So I'm just going to point out the things that are of interest or things that could be a problem for you, something you need to be aware of. Chapter 1 is fundamental skills, as we mentioned. Look at the objectives for chapter 1. Well, first of all, the value of Excel is to make decisions, right? That's one of the values. You may never have thought of it as being a tool to help you make decisions, but that's really what it's all about. It's a communication tool. Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, these are communication tools. Communicating with others, communicating with yourself, helping to get your mind around a lot of information. Why? So that you can make a good decision, okay? Learn how to start Excel. You'll do that, we'll do that. Become familiar with the workbook. So an Excel file, a project on Excel, which you might refer to as an Excel file, is called a workbook. And a workbook can have many sheets. I already mentioned it can have, I don't know how many, 256. Basically, it can have more sheets than you'll ever probably use. Most of the time, most people only use one sheet or maybe 12 or 15 sheets at the most, okay? But the workbook contains all those sheets that relate to a particular project. So workbook is a euphemism. It's another word or a synonym for file with respect to Excel. And a worksheet is a particular page in a workbook. The Excel ribbon is very similar to the Word ribbon, the PowerPoint ribbon, Publisher, Access, all of the Microsoft Office programs since 2007 have had this ribbon area at the top. That's where all our tools are at. The Excel ribbon is no different than the other programs, other than the fact that many of the commands are, many are similar, but many are specific for Excel. So there are many different tools as well. Your mouse obviously has commands. If you're familiar with Windows computers in general, you right-click your mouse, depending on where your mouse is, you'll have a different list of commands. And in Excel, that list of choices changes depending on where you right-click. So they talk about that in the chapter. You need to learn how to save workbooks. Fortunately, to save an Excel file or an Excel workbook, it's not much different than saving any other kind of a file or any other kind of a project. The status bar in this program is more important than the status bar in other programs. Many of you probably don't even know what the status bar is. It's the bottommost portion of a program window. It used to be something that we would teach, you know, routinely. In most programs, there's not much useful information there. In Word, there is. It will tell you, you know, specifics about the document and where your cursor is in the document. In Excel, it gives you some specific information too. It's very useful in Excel. So pay attention to the status bar. Excel help. Well, in my opinion, if you want help with Excel, the best thing to do is to go on to Google and do a good search. The Microsoft help, it's not my first choice, but maybe try it. Maybe try it. So it's not critical. You know, I don't consider that critical. So I'm not going to read this. For those of you that have time, read it. And I want to remind you at this point, you're enrolled in this class, but you're not my servant, and I'm not your master. You are in control of your own life. You can do anything you want. You can take this class, you can drop it, you know, you can, all right. So why did you take this class? You heard that Excel was useful, or you know that Excel is useful. You want to learn about it a little bit more. Great, great. Serve yourself. Serve yourself. Um, I'm going to tell you what you need to pass the class, and I'm going to tell you what you need to master the class, or to do as best as you can, right? I want you to. But also, I don't want you to feel compelled or obligated or under pressure to do these things. This is for your own good. All of this information that we're learning is for your own good. So when you have an opportunity and you have time in your own life, uh, learn the material better than the teacher does, right? Satisfy yourself. I'm only around for the next 12 weeks, or I guess now in the course it's another 9 weeks, but hopefully I'll be around longer than that. But in terms of your life, right? So I'm just a temporary guide to help you out. But realize that your life goes on, and you know, take control of your education and your growth, and realize that you're not here to jump through hoops. You're not here to get a certificate. Okay. If you think you're here to get a certificate, you're in the wrong class. Go to Photoshop and learn how to make a certificate, and then you can create a fictitious certificate, and you can make yourself a PhD or a doctor, right? So if your goal is to have a certificate, go make one in Photoshop. I'm joking, but there's a truth that I'm sharing with this sarcasm. Okay. Um, the certificate means something if you learn the material, but don't make it your full goal. Make understanding and acquiring useful skills your goal. Okay. And then hopefully, uh, that coincides with getting the certificate. So this project at the very end will look like this. Now, will it look exactly like this when you're done? Maybe not. And I'll explain why as we scroll through a few more pages. Some of you will be tempted to try to look at this. Some of you more advanced students will be tempted to try and look at this and make it. But I'm going to remove points for anything that's incorrect, and I'm going to be very strict because I know students try to do that. Why should you flip through the pages? Because they're going to show you how they did it, and how they recommend that you do it is a new way, perhaps. It's different than how you normally work. So for some of you that are more advanced with Excel, you're not just here to prove to me that you can do Excel. I don't care. And hopefully you're not just here to prove to yourself that you can do Excel, because that's only marginally useful. The best thing for those of you that already have Excel skills is to learn, it is obviously to get that sense of assurance that you do know a lot about Excel. Of course, that feels good, but also to learn new ways of doing things, because you might find out that certain things that you've been doing, there's a much easier way or a different way that makes sense depending on the context. Okay, so I don't recommend you try to create the project based on that. Just flip through the pages. And for those of you that are new to Excel, read the steps very carefully and follow them. For those of you that have a lot of familiarity with Excel, read the steps. And if you're already familiar with it, okay, do it. But at least peruse. Look in general through the steps if you're more advanced. If you are a Mac user, this course is not designed specifically for Mac users. There are very few Mac users that take this course. There are very few Mac users in the world. Most users are PC users. Most Excel users are PC users. However, this book has been written in such a way that they provide help for people that have Macintosh computers. No, it's not therapeutic psychological help. It is this little apple is an indication of the help that they provide. So sometimes the way that they tell you how to do things, well, all the times it's in Windows terms or PC terms, but sometimes they'll provide that little apple and they'll tell you, if you're a Macintosh user, I'm sorry, but if you're a Macintosh user, you can do it this way. There's a slightly different way sometimes. By the way, I love Macintosh computers. They're fantastic, but they do represent a very small portion of people that use computers, the computers out in the world, rather. The Excel workbook, they're explaining the Excel workbook. It used to be they only gave you 3 blank pages or 3 blank worksheets in a workbook. Now they give you 1, I think, or maybe it's 3. It used to be 12. An Excel file by generically is referred to as a book, book 1, book 2. In Microsoft Word, a blank Microsoft Word document is called document 1, document 2. In PowerPoint, a blank presentation is called presentation 1, presentation 2. In Publisher, a blank publication is called publication 1, publication 2. In other words, these are generic names until you create a specific name for your project. So book 1 might be the name that you see as the name of your file before you save it. And you'll see that up in the image here. Okay, I'm going to scroll through a little bit more quickly. There's lots of diagrams here. Some of these diagrams will be a little different on the version of Excel that we now have, because these images are from the 2019 version, and it's changed a little bit since then, but not much at all. I'm just going to scroll through. You should look at this. You should learn this information. That's why you're here. They're pointing out things that are important to you about the Excel environment, the basic Excel window. Okay, so I'm just scrolling through this, and I'll point out things that I think are especially significant or especially important. The Excel ribbon is the toolbar area up along the top, very similar to Microsoft Word, especially the beginning of it. It will look very similar to Microsoft Word for many of you. Now, they give you a definition of all the different ribbons, I'm sorry, all of the different tabs on the ribbon. And file, the very first one, is not a, I'll put a little star there so you see what I'm talking about. The file tab is not a ribbon area. It's just your general place that you go to work with the file as a whole. You can save as, you can print from that area. Okay. The first real ribbon that has any significance, the first real ribbon tab rather, is Home. And all of the Microsoft programs have a Home ribbon. And this is where the most frequently used tools are going to be. This is where you should be 75% of the time. So I guess what I'll do is I'm going to give that 4 hearts. And then the insert ribbon, that's where you might insert objects onto your spreadsheet. Just like Microsoft Word, I believe there's an insert ribbon. You insert images. In this case, you can insert a chart from that area. So that's very useful. Page layout also, very useful. This is similar to Word, where you can control your margins, your page orientation. Okay. Now notice I'm only putting 1 heart for those tabs. It's nowhere near as important as the Home ribbon. You should be on the Home ribbon 75% of the time. If you're not, I wonder what you're doing. Formulas. Unless you're an advanced Excel user, you should really almost never be on the formulas ribbon. Now, why do I say that? Because everything that you need, just about everything that you need as a beginning to intermediate user of Excel, can be performed from the Home ribbon and performed from the keyboard with keyboard shortcuts. You want to stay on the same ribbon as long as possible. You don't want to be flipping around ribbons, going to different ribbons. So the formulas ribbon, there's not that much there that's useful. Data is useful, but it's a little bit more advanced. So I guess what we'll do is we'll give those a star. Why don't we give them something? So a little bit more advanced people will find some useful tools on formulas and data. Review, no, you're not going to go to the review ribbon. I'm not even going to give that a star. There's nothing of use there, or very little of use there. Now, spell check is there, but you won't go there for spell check. Why? because you're going to use the function key F7. All the Microsoft programs have the spell check available under the function key F7. So why would you go to the review area? View, I'm going to give that a star because in all the programs, the view ribbon area is where you can control what you're seeing on the screen, and that's useful. You don't change the document there or the spreadsheet. Nothing has changed. It's just the way it's perceived to you, the way you can see it on the screen. Help, I'm not going to give that a star. Draw, I'm not going to give that a star. The last one, developer, that is option. That's not going to probably be available, or it's not going to be seen on your version of Excel. There are tools in Excel that are hidden. The developer ribbon tab is hidden and it's advanced, and that's the reason why they hide it. But you can activate it. I think they show you how. But you'll find tools there that relate to programming and macros. All right, let's move on. So already, hopefully I've simplified some things for you. You're not going to be switching between ribbons that often when using Excel effectively. Now, the first section here is how to customize the Excel ribbon. I don't know why they teach this. You shouldn't customize the Excel ribbon. You shouldn't customize any ribbon in any Office program because you do not want to create a situation where you can't easily go sit at another computer and work just as effectively as your own, okay? Or someone can't come and work at your computer because they can't find anything. You've created such a customized environment that only you can work in it. That's a bad idea. Now, are there any occasions where you might want to create a macro and use a special and add a special button to the ribbon? Yes, that can be helpful to add a special button to the ribbon, or if you get advanced and you want to create a macro, you could do that too. So do pay attention to this and realize that you can remove buttons, which I wouldn't do, but you can also add some tool that you find helpful, some tool that normally takes 3 or 4 clicks, you can add it as a button to the ribbon. And this is true in all the Microsoft programs. So I don't really think it's a good idea that they teach that, but, you know, because it doesn't pertain particularly specifically to Excel. And it doesn't necessarily help you with this project. But for those of you that want to learn, go ahead and spend time looking at that. Quick access toolbar, you need to know about that. They explain the quick access toolbar, and you can customize the quick access toolbar. That's easy to add buttons to. It's not as complicated as that customize section. So feel free to do that. Like for instance, I really can't see anything up there that I would add. But you could add a button up there. No, I don't do that. When I first learned about customizing the quick access toolbar and customizing ribbons, sure, I used that knowledge and I customized things, but I haven't done that in years because I now have keyboard shortcuts for everything I want to do. And I don't, so anyway, that's something to be aware of, but I don't think it's that useful. Now, the mini toolbar that appears when you're working in a certain area or when you right click, fantastic. When it first came out, I found it annoying, but I love it. And so that is an image of the mini toolbar. The file tab is what they also refer to as the backstage view. This is what I told you. This is the place where I told you they have all of the global commands related to the file as a whole, as an object. So saving, save as, metadata about the file, different kinds of tags that you can embed within the file. Print preview is over there, print options for working with the file, okay? So they introduce that to you, not critical for this course, I don't believe. They show you this Excel options area. It's good to know about, but again, not critical for this course. Here's an image from from Macintosh. Most of the images you'll see are PC or Windows computers. This image is obviously from a Macintosh computer. Saving a workbook or an Excel file using the save as command. Their explanation is probably okay. A simple explanation is this: when you're creating a file for the first time, save. When you are updating changes to a file, click save. So then when would you use save as? When you're creating a copy of a file, a duplicate, or another version of the file. That right there, that 15-second explanation is probably the best explanation of those two commands that you'll get. Now, there's more to it than that, but I'm going to leave it at that. One of the things that's confusing, I'll say, is the first time you click save to save a file, it gives you the save as dialog box, and that's confusing for many people. But follow the steps, you'll be fine. At the very end of sections, they have these keyboard shortcut boxes where they give you some tips, and skill refreshes where they remind you how to do certain things. Here's where they introduce the status bar. I told you that was important. Excel help, I told you that was not really that important, but you should pay attention to it. The next section in the chapter is entering, editing, and managing data. So here's where you're going to start entering some information. Now, you might recall in the on the assignment page, I said that you wouldn't really start doing anything until I think it was 17 or something like that, or 22 or something. Well, they have you open up a blank workbook, and I believe it was blue page 17. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. The PDF itself has 96 or 86 pages. And according to the PDF document, I am on page 24. However, according to the pages in the book, I am on page 17. What color is that 17? It's blue. So what is the point? The point is that textbooks oftentimes have a beginning set of pages that they don't number. The title page, the author page, the table of contents pages. So those pages are not included in the numbering. So that's why the total number of pages at this point, 24, is greater than the page number in the book, which is 17. So the difference is 7, right? So apparently there are 7 introductory pages to the book. So I always give you, when I tell you to go to a certain page number, I always tell you, go to blue page 17 or 22 or whatever. So what happens on 17? There was something special about this page. I think this is where you first save. Okay, perfect. I scrolled past it, but this is the first place where you actually do something. So they have you open up a blank workbook in Excel. And actually, they ask you to do that earlier. But here they say, if you haven't already done so, open up a blank workbook in Excel. Now, I think you know how to do that. You go to your menu bar. You can type in Excel or your start button, and you can start up Excel. When you start Excel, you're going to get a blank sheet. Now, if a blank sheet doesn't immediately open up, then you'll be taken to this particular page when you start Excel. This is the backstage view. Well, is it technically? Let's see. Anyway, it's the page where I can choose what kind of project I want to work on. If I want to work on a previous project, or if I want to start a new blank workbook. Most of the time, people choose new blank workbook, so that's what they want you to do. So now I have the new blank workbook started. And now let me make this a little bit more convenient to look at. So that's the place where they want you to be for this particular, for the beginning of the project, step 17, page 17, and step 1 there. Then they want you to choose save as. Now, actually, it doesn't matter whether you hit save or save as or the little save button up on the top there. All three will get you to the same place. I think you just hit the save button on the top. And then a save as dialog box opens up and they prompt you to save your project in a certain location with a certain name. You always want to address the location first. Anytime you're working with computers, you always find the location where you want to save the project first. Don't choose the name first. It's a bad habit. So I'm going to put mine in my Excel folder here. Let's see, I'll just call this projects. So I have a special folder for this semester. I'll put it in the projects folder. And they want it to be called, let me read down, CH1 Merchandise City Sales Data. You can highlight that, copy it, and paste it, or you can type it in from scratch. It's up to you. You can also add your name to it. Oh, don't put a period in the naming of a file. I typed my name and I put in my last initial and I hit the period. Never put a period. 99.9% of the times, do not put a period in the naming of a file. It can be a big problem. So I have the correct location where I want to save it. I have the name that I want to call it. I even added my own name to the end of it, which is a good idea for all of our work. And then I'll click save. Okay, and then so in this file, up at the very top, I can see, I'll zoom up so you can see it. I can see in the title bar, I can see the name of the file. Okay, and I'm ready to work if I choose to. Now, this is not going to be a demonstration of the project. I just wanted to get you started. And so on page 17, which I am on, blue page 17, that's where they have you get started. Okay, and so they take you through the steps. If you do choose to hit save as, they show you how to go about doing it. Status bar, I told you this was important, right? Now you can change the items that appear on the status bar. Again, you can customize, just like you can customize the ribbon, you can customize the status bar. I don't recommend that you customize the status bar. It's already pretty good. The fact that you can do it, maybe it's more important in Word. I think it's more important in Microsoft Word, where you can add certain features that might be helpful for a long document in Microsoft Word. I mentioned the Excel help place you can skip. So entering, editing, and managing data, this is where you begin to create the document. So this is blue page 22. So the beginning page of a section, the page is in the footer, centered, and it's blue. This is 22. But on most other pages, as I go to page 23, which is the next page, the pages will be in the top left or the top right column, the page numbering. Now, is there anything I need to tell you about this? Yes, there is as we go. So they begin to show you how to enter the information. Pay attention to the way they have you do it. They'll have you hit the tab key to go from cell to cell. After you type something, you'll tab to go to the next cell. Everything in Excel resides within its own cell compartment. Like for instance, average price here, you can't see the whole text average price, but it's all in cell C2 entirely, even though you can't see it. The view of it is truncated. Column C probably needs to be widened. Okay, so some of these concepts are going to be a little bit difficult or new for the new users of Excel. But in Excel, all text and all data appears within individual cell sections. Okay, so that's very different than Microsoft Word. So you need to hit tab to go from cell to cell, or you can click into a different cell, or you can use the arrows on the keyboards many times, the navigational arrows, so long as you're not working with a formula. If you're just working with numbers or text, the arrows on the keyboard will allow you to navigate just like a mouse. Now, they want you to enter some information. So they tell you how to begin doing that on page 22. And then on page 23, they show you what it looks like. They also point out the fact that when you have a cell selected, the contents of that cell will appear in the formula bar. So I think you can see here the true contents of any cell are displayed in the formula bar. Don't look at the spreadsheet and think that's the true contents. It's not. Average PR is not the true contents. Average price is. So the formula bar is very beneficial for seeing the true contents of any cell. Now, here's where I wanted to warn you. On page 24, they start telling you some of the numbers to enter. The way they present the information, step 1 and 2 is fine. But step 3, look at it. They say, enter the following numbers in cells B4 through B14. And you're like, what the heck? And they give you this long list of numbers, and you're going to get off track. Same thing with step 6 and step 9. Now, watch what they say. At step 10, they say, when finished, check your data. And they say, look at figure 1.16. Well, let's just go ahead and look at the next page. Look at 1, that figure right there. Why did they just give me this to begin with? This is a lot easier to follow, right? So this is a shortcut. So those of you that are watching this video just learned a shortcut that's going to make you less frustrated. Instead of trying to enter the data, from step 3, step 6, and step 9, read those steps, but enter the data by following the image. It's going to be a lot easier. Editing data, that's a new section that starts. And they show you images every step along the way. That's why this section of the book is so long. They also identify all these important areas of the Excel window for you. So some of you you'll be like, well, I want to watch TV, or I want to go eat dinner, or, I don't want to do this. Actually, this might be one of the most important chapters in the book, because this is where they establish what things are called and where they are, where they're located. So don't skip over this first chapter. Now, for those of you that are totally new to Excel and you're not even sure you want to learn it, well, I understand. Absorb what you can. It's a lot, I know. It's not hard. None of this is hard. It's time consuming. Okay. So there's a big difference between difficulty and, time consuming. So this is not difficult at all. It's very, very easy, but it takes time. But everything worthwhile in life takes effort and time. Or I should say, there's very few things that are worthwhile that don't take effort and time. Okay, autofill. This tool we already talked about, we already used in week 2, but it's so important. So if you didn't fully understand it, or if you want to make sure you understand it better, pay specific attention to this section on autofill. It is the biggest time saver. I know people that have been using Excel for years and wasting untold hours that probably add up to days and weeks of their life that they've wasted because they didn't know about this tool. My cousin told me recently, she said, hey, I found out that if you click and drag on a formula, you can replicate the formula. And I'm like, yeah, I teach that day 1. Okay, I don't teach it day 1, but I think we worked on it during week 2. Okay. So trust me, I've heard these stories from my students too that tell me that they do everything manually. The fill handle is incredible. And it doesn't just duplicate text and create series like January through December. And it doesn't just duplicate formulas. It has a lot of additional value as well. Okay, so they give you specific instruction on autofill. So make sure you understand that. It is so awesome. And then the other thing that a lot of people that even use autofill and the fill handle, another thing that they don't know about is the autofill options button that appears after you use it. And then you can convert what it is that you've duplicated or copied or extended if it's a series. You can modify it even after you've created it, but only immediately after you've created it. That's called the autofill options button. So that's very, very powerful. Don't skip over that. Remember, I said you could skip over help or at least not pay attention to it very much, but autofill, don't skip that. Pay attention to it. All right, deleting data and using undo, very, very important. The most important thing that I find that students don't know about the undo button is that there's a menu where you can choose the point to which you want to undo. In other words, there's a little black triangle next to the undo button. So you can go back one step at a time, or you can click the menu and see all 50 steps that you recently accomplished, and you can go back 20 steps or 10 steps or 5 steps. You can jump ahead, you can jump back, and then if you jump back too far, you can use the redo button, and you can skip ahead. So that's the one part that a lot of students, a lot of Office users aren't aware of, because that quick access toolbar with undo and redo, that's available in all the Microsoft programs. Clearing formats, this is useful to know about, but it's not really critical. Adjusting columns and rows. Oh, look, the teacher put some notes in, finally. So this is a note I put in recently. Let me say something about columns and rows first. You'll be adjusting the width of columns all the time, because the text that you put into a cell sometimes is narrow, sometimes is wide. So that's something you'll do all the time, but you'll very infrequently, if ever, need to adjust the height of a row. And that's because row height is controlled by the font size. So normally people just choose the font size they want. The row automatically expands to the correct height. Okay, so it's very rare that you would ever need to or want to increase the row height. It's very one odd place that you might do it is at, like, if you have a table of information on a spreadsheet and you want the heading area to be tall, but the text to be smaller within that heading area. Just very unusual situations. So you don't play with row heights, even though they're going to give you all kinds of instructions for playing with row heights. Now, at the time that the book was created, the default font in Microsoft programs was Calibri. It had been Calibri for 15 or 20 years. That was the default or automatic font for a blank workbook. And 11 point was the default size. Now, prior to 15 or 20 years ago, it used to be Times New Roman. And I think it was Times New Roman 12, 12-point font. But most of you are familiar with Calibri 11. That's what we've had for the last more than a decade. Recently, though, in the last couple of years, Microsoft Office has updated the default font, and now it is Aptos Narrow. Now, is it just Aptos or Aptos Narrow? It's Aptos Narrow 11. Okay, so I do have that correct. It's Aptos Narrow, and it is 11. It's a new font style. Font refers to the shape of the letters, the design of the letters. It used to be called typeface or font face. The theme colors are also different recently. Every time they change the font theme or scheme, they also change the font colors or the default theme colors. So there's a set of colors that are convenient to get to. Now, your Excel program can make, I don't know, 256 colors or millions of colors, actually probably millions. But there's a grid of, there's a palette of colors that they offer you, and it's a limited number of, I guess, 8 or 10 different shades. And that theme that they give you, along with the default font, which is now Aptos, that new set of theme colors has changed. So I point out the fact that on blue page 55, I have some more notes about the theme colors. But anyway, so on your new workbook that you opened up, you can see this when I look at my font. You don't have Calibri, you have Aptos Narrow. Just keep it there, that's fine. This is why I said the finished project that you create will look slightly different than the one in the book because of the font. That's the only difference, really. The font will be slightly different. Okay, they talk about widening columns, different ways to do it. I like the auto fit method and I like the manual fit method, but I pretty much never use this method here where you put in a certain number. And I pretty much never use this method here where you identify or you make it wider by a certain amount. Pretty much nobody uses those. There's very few people use those. You make it wide enough for the data, you make it wide enough to look good. And it doesn't matter what the number is. But one of the things you can notice is there's different measurements here, pixels, and the width is in a different measurement. So they show you all, I think they show you 2 or 3 different ways to do it there. Okay, so here they're showing you the progress of the sheet. I don't know, they wanted you to widen or to increase the height of row 15. That's fine. They ask you to do it. It's part of the project. Please do it. Just know that it's unusual to do that. And it's definitely not necessary. It's not an important skill. Row height is not an important skill. You heard it here first. Hiding columns and rows, generally you don't want to do this. You don't want to hide things. You know what happens if you hide things? Well, you lose them because you forget where they are and you forget that you even have them. Now, there's a hiding columns and rows temporarily for a specific purpose, like maybe you're showing another coworker some data on the spreadsheet and they don't have authorization to see certain information. So you might want to temporarily hide columns or rows for privacy sake. And because the other person doesn't have authorization to see the information, you might hide it. But in general, do not hide columns and rows. Now, if it's part of the project, do it. But just know in the real world, this is a bad idea to hide columns and rows. In general, it's a bad idea. Now, it's important to know how to do it because you need to know how to unhide if one of your brilliant coworkers hides some information and you can't find it. You need to recognize that it's hidden and you need to know how to unhide it. Okay, so you need to learn these skills, not necessarily to hide things, but to maybe to unhide them, right? Most of the time. So they show you how to do that. Some things are important. Actually, many things are important to know about, but not everything is important to use on a daily, weekly, or even monthly or yearly basis. So I'm telling you the things that you're going to use all the time, like autofill, and I'm telling you the things that you'll like virtually never do, like increasing the height of rows or hiding columns and rows. They're showing you the fact that column C is missing and how to get it back. It's hidden, right? So some good techniques and tools there, how to insert new columns and rows, how to move data. Now, the basic way to move information in any computer file, well, I should say in word processing like Word and PowerPoint, Publisher, Excel. The basic ways you move information is cut and paste. Cut it from here, paste it to there. That's moving. There's a second way that applies to all of those programs, including Excel. It's called drag and drop. You select the information, you click, hold, and drag it to a new location, release the mouse, and it's moved. It's a faster way of doing things, but cut and paste is used when you have to go a greater distance. Okay, so drag and drop is useful when you're only moving something a short distance. Now here they show you this tricky technique when moving information in Excel. You select the cells that you want to move, and then you need to point at the border. And then you get a special symbol on your mouse, that of a cross with 4 arrows. And you need to see that symbol before you click. Then you click and hold, and you move the mouse to a new location, release, and the content moves. Okay, so it is a little more challenging than Word. In Word, you simply need to highlight a sentence or a word or a paragraph and click anywhere inside the highlighted area and click, hold, drag, and release. So here it's a little more challenging. You have to click on the perimeter of the selected section, then click, hold, and drag, and make sure you see the right symbol. Tips for Mac users: deleting columns and rows, that's very useful, very important. Formatting and data analysis, let's see what they're talking about here. Well, at first they show you an example of a spreadsheet that we're not doing. This is not the project in chapter 1, nor is it the project. I don't think it's anywhere in this book. But they show you, they point out some things like border lines and certain kinds of number formats like accounting number format, comma style format. Actually, when we get to week 6, you're going to hear me talk about the accounting number format and the comma style format. Those two go together nicely. Now, there's also a third format for numbers that relates to money, and it's called currency. Currency does not work with accounting or comma. Now, that's a quiz question in week 6. And it's something that we revisit in week 6, but I'm happy to see that they teach it here. And they also show you how a chart is used, can be used. Okay, and all right, so I think what you see as I'm scrolling through here is it's a super long chapter, but most of it is explanation about tools and how to use certain things and concepts, explanations of concepts. It's all very good. The project itself will not take you very long. What will take you the most time is reading the information or becoming familiar with the information. So I'd highly recommend that you don't skip. I mean, try to put in the time, because I don't think the other chapters are as have as much reading or as much explanation. Because once you learn the basics of Excel, then it's only about you learning a new tool. So you'll learn new tools and new skills every week. But here they're explaining everything to you. So it's kind of a lot at once. But then, like I said, the project itself is not that difficult. It's not difficult at all if you follow the steps. Okay, and these boxes at the end of each section, those again are short summaries of some of the keyboard shortcuts and tips and, remember this and, just. And something else I wanted to point out is anytime you see numbered steps, that's where you need to do things. So for some of you, you may not have time to read all these pages and you just want to create the project. Then what you need to do is scan the pages as you scroll and focus on the numbered step sections, okay? Because you need to do all the numbered step sections for sure. That's how you create the project. But in terms of understanding what you're doing, I hope you read those pages, but I know not everybody will. So if you're going to skip, then skip the explanations, but don't skip the numbers, right? So you can look at, we'll use this section as an example. Okay, this is formatting data analysis. Let's see what they're going to read the objectives. That gives you an idea of what you're going to learn that chapter. But then if you're going to skip the explanations and scroll down to where the steps are, like right here. Step 1, step 2. Step 3, 4, 5. Step 1, 2. Step 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 12. Okay, you get the idea. All right, now earlier I meant, oh, by the way, this is really important, number formats and the accounting style, the comma style, decreasing and increasing decimals. In this particular exercise, students oftentimes lose points. Now, you can always resubmit your project, and most of my students do that, but students oftentimes do not have the right number of decimals. They haven't done that part right. So make sure you understand how to increase and decrease decimals. And I'll point that out again at the very end when we look at the final view of the project. Now, here's where they've made some changes. This is blue page 55, and the instructor has put some notes on the document there. Hi, students, Microsoft has changed the default theme colors. Therefore, the choice of colors you will see when filling the title cell will be different. The book instructs you to use blue, accent 1, darker 25%, but that's not on the list. Instead, use dark teal, accent 1, darker 25%. So you're going to choose a different color because they changed the set of colors that appears. This set that you see in the book is not going to be there. It's going to be a new set. Okay. And you're going to choose, I think the one that I tell you to use is the same one that's in that same position. It's called dark teal accent 1. It's in the same exact spot. Dark teal accent 1, darker 25%. Now you might say, well, teacher, why can't I show my creativity and use any color I want? Because if you use any color you want, that doesn't demonstrate that you know how to use the tool. Okay. What if you just create anything you want? Bunch of numbers on a sheet, colors, numbers, scribbles, right? That shows your individuality, but it doesn't show me that you know anything about what we're trying to teach you. So yes, in education, most of the time, 90% of the time, especially at this level, maybe at the PhD level, you have more creativity. You can do a research paper on anything you want. That's different. But when you're trying to learn and demonstrate specific concrete tools, you need to know how to choose different things and know that every color in the palette has a name. If you do this step correctly, it shows me that you probably understand the fact that every color in the palette has a name. It also probably will demonstrate that you know the fact that about the fact that there are different themes, there are different sets of colors, and that's a very valuable thing, a fun thing. That's a very fun thing to learn about Microsoft Office. A lot of people that use Microsoft Office aren't even aware of the different sets of colors that are available. But that makes it a very fun way to interact with your documents, to create your own custom set of colors, or to use a special set of colors. So I put another note down here. Okay. All right. So my notes are always in dark green when I put them in. So that's one of the few things that has changed in the last few years. The project's coming along. You see another image of your project as it looks at this point. Now they talk about data alignment, wrapping text, merging cells and center. This is all very important section. Here's the ribbon where most of those tools are found. Okay. By the way, that blue color that you see there, our color will be slightly different. It will be dark teal, so will be a little different. Another image as you can see what has been accomplished here. The title of the project is wrapped within cell 1, and cell 1, A1 rather, cell A1 is wide, and the information is centered, and it's wrapped. There's two lines within cell A1. And so the skills to do that were taught in the previous pages. And there's also some border lines here. Here's where borders are added. Now, many students do this. I would say 20%, 15 to 20% of the students do this incorrectly. Well, all right, 10%. 10% of the students do this incorrectly. Maybe they're tired by the time they get to this point and they just click whatever. There are thick border lines. There are thin border lines. There are border lines that surround areas, and there are some that just are horizontal or vertical, right? So do this correctly, because you can create really nice looking spreadsheets if you know how to use these border lines. And what they show you here is just the beginning of what can be done with border lines. It's one of the artistic parts of, we're getting into that, this last portion of the project is a little more artistic. You're dealing with colors, you're dealing with border lines. These are the things that can make the image of your spreadsheet more appealing. And if it's more appealing, it might communicate more effectively. Effective communication is directly related to form. Form and function oftentimes come together. Clear communication is benefited by a smart form, a clear, consistent form. Okay, so they show you this custom area where you can do anything you want with borders and shading. It's really fantastic, but it takes some practice to get good at it. Just be aware of it. They're going to have you use it maybe, but it's more than most people need at this point. It's pretty advanced. Grid lines and borders added to make a worksheet easier to read and analyze. Now you have to be careful. In week 2, I believe I had you activate grid lines in the print preview area for our grocery list. That term, grid lines, in the print preview area is very, very different than what they're talking about here. What they're talking about here are border lines, and border lines are specific dark lines, or they can be any color and any thickness and horizontal, vertical, horizontal. Let's see. We don't think this really shows the thicker lines. There are thicker lines in some places and thinner lines in other places. I'll show you that in a minute. AutoSum, I think you already know how important that is. But you do not need to go where they tell you to go. They tell you to go to the formulas ribbon to get it. It's on the home ribbon, right? Why would you go somewhere new and different for a tool that's already available to you? Do not leave the home ribbon unless you absolutely have to. That's the rule. So I've made my window a little bit wider so that all of the ribbon tools would, be seen. And so you can see over towards the right side of the home ribbon, we have this auto sum button. Clicking the right side gives me the choice of those 5 common commands. And clicking the left side is the default action, which will give me the first command, which is sum. Okay, so we've used that in week 2. But you don't need to go to formulas to get that button. Why would you do that? It's the same button. Don't do that. Stay on the home ribbon. Well, actually, for the purposes of the project, you can do it if you want, but my recommendation is it's not a good thing to learn. You don't want to, it's a good idea to learn about the different tools and where they are, but it's not a good idea to get into the practice or to develop the habit of doing things in a long-winded, inefficient, ineffective way. As I say long-winded, some of you are thinking, yeah, teacher, this video is long-winded. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're going to wrap it up soon. Okay, so this is after totals are added. And still the thickness, the difference in the thickness of the lines may not be fully noticeable. So I'm going to show, well, I think you can see that it's thicker here. And I believe this one is going to be a thicker line, and this is a thicker line. And this is a thicker line. What about all these lines throughout here? These are all thin lines, both vertical and horizontal. They're all thin. But the perimeter lines are usually thicker. And then lines where you're setting information off apart from other information, like right here, that line there is setting off the total information. That's thicker. And then this line where it sets off the column headings, that's a thicker line too. I'll show you another example of that before we're done in another minute or two. Moving, renaming, inserting, and deleting worksheets. Well, you need to know how to work with sheets and worksheets. So they show you how to work with worksheets. There's another view. Oh, this is their view called the final appearance. And again, the color will be different and the font shape will be a little different. Let me show you what's commonly some common mistakes. Notice there are no decimals here or here. Sometimes students will forget to remove the decimals. There are decimals here, and that's fine in the average price column because the book never tells you to remove them. But there are no decimals in the second and fourth columns. Another issue is the border lines. As I already mentioned, some students just don't put in the border lines correctly. Some students forget to change the font in the top area there. I believe the font has changed to Arial instead of, well, you're going to be in Aptos narrow. So this is going to, I believe this is changed to Arial. And it's also bolded and italicized. So it's a different font. It's bolded and it's italicized. And some students miss that. So I point that out. This is the accounting format, these numbers. Notice the dollar sign is aligned against the left side of the cell. So that's the peculiar thing of the accounting format. Currency format is not like that. So make sure your dollar signs are all aligned like that for those two columns. Why they didn't have you use the accounting format in this column, I don't know. This is the comma style format. I think perhaps they just wanted you to explore the different formats, comma style and accounting style. Okay, let's see what else is on this part of this project. Okay, you might think, well, printing, I don't need to do this, right? You do. Why? Because they want to teach you about the different tools related to page setup, margins, and centering the project. So watch how it eventually looks. I think, let me see if they show you an image of it. They have you put in headers and footers. So, well, that's not the final view. Let me keep going. There we go. This is close to the final view. You can't see the whole thing. Let me zoom in. Notice that there's header information in the top left and the center. I believe there's also header information in the bottom right corner. Okay, that would be footer information. The project is set to set in such a way that it is centered in the middle of the page. It is both vertically and horizontally centered. And also, probably you can tell this, it's landscape style. Now, I opened up a student's project from a previous semester. Let's see. That's not it. So here's a student's project from a previous semester. This is the 100% view. And in this view, I think you can clearly see the thickness of the lines. Very thick outside borders. It goes all around. You can't tell, but it goes all around the outside. You can't tell in this particular view. And then the inside, and then this border is thick to set off the totals. And I believe, and this border at the top of just below the headings is thick. Let me put this into the print preview mode so you can see what it looks like in that view. I'll make it full screen so it shows up a little bit better. Okay, well, I really don't want to show the student's name. I'll show their first name. How's that? So the header on the left is the date, and then your student's name will be in the middle. So I'm going to skip that. I don't want to show the student's name. Not that anyone cares, but so you can see, so I'm skipping the header section. I'm not showing it, but you can see the spreadsheet is centered in the middle of the page, and there is a page number in the bottom right footer. That's part of the project. And here you can really see those thick lines. So there's a thick outside border and then thick horizontal borders above the totals and below the column headings. The rest are just the default thin lines. Okay, so that was a long video, and in it, I explained how the book is set up. We're going to be using the book throughout the whole um, project, throughout the whole course, rather. And then I began to look at chapter 1 in detail for two reasons: to show you the things that are really important as you begin to learn Excel in a formal way using this textbook, where they provide so much detail. I wanted to point out the things that are very, very useful and those that are not so critical at this point. I also wanted to help you get a greater level of comfort with the project that you're going to be creating. And lastly, I wanted to give you permission for those students that don't have time to read all the pages and all the explanations. I wanted to give those students permission or instructions on how to just create the project as best they can without requiring as much time, you know, as would be required if you're going to read all the pages, right? If you have time to do it, if you have the desire, the best thing to do is to read all the pages. And as you read, if you already know what they're saying, you can skip to the next paragraph. You can skim that way. That's the best way. Not everyone has that kind of time available or that interest. So definitely focus on the numbered steps in the project. That's when you are told in the book, that's how they tell you what they want you to do. It's a numbered step. So as long as you're doing that and then referring to the diagrams, you'll be able to create the final project, which looks like this here. I want to thank you for your time watching the video. Hopefully it's helpful to you. Anything of value in this life requires time and effort, suffering to some extent, right? There is no gain without suffering or discomfort. Maybe that's a better word, right? But hopefully you feel the rewards of having learned. And maybe some of you will realize financial rewards, okay? Not just internal rewards that you're growing, but hopefully you'll have opportunities available to you. There's a lot of people out there in the world using Excel every day, but very few of them have had this kind of training or will ever have this kind of training. So it's an opportunity to you to learn Excel very well and to make yourself stand apart from potential coworkers or maybe even your current coworkers, not so that you can brag, but so that you can become the best that you can be and a leader amongst your coworkers and someone valued by your boss and your company. Okay, maybe that's a good place to end this video. All right, thank you for your time. Good luck on the project.